Thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Friday the 13th. Now, if you're wondering why I am reviewing Friday the 13th again, this is actually the 2009 remake of the franchise. It's essentially just a blend of the first three movies. I'm going to talk about that in just one moment. But as you guys can tell from the thumbnail and the title, I'm joined in this video once again by my buddy David from Interpreting the Stars. Really excited to have him in this video because whenever I've had anybody collab with me when it comes to the Friday the 13th franchise, they've usually been people who I know are really into slasher films, and even if they've had negative criticisms, they have an attachment to Jason or attachment to slashers. And David likes slasher films. He talks about that a little bit later, but I know he looks for different things in movies, and I knew he wasn't going to be going into this with necessarily the same bias that somebody like me or other people that I've had in my videos for Friday the 13th. And I knew that he'd be going at it with not necessarily the same bias as somebody like me or other people that I've had in my videos that love Friday the 13th, the franchise, for what it is. I knew that he'd be reviewing it from a different standpoint. So we're going to hear from him in just a little bit. And yeah, this movie for me is definitely a breath of fresh air. As I've said in these reviews, I binge watched all of these movies right back to back to back to back to back. So, you know, if you guys have seen my reviews for the other ones, so many of the installments in this franchise are laughable. There are positives and negatives about each and every installment, but the later you get into the franchise, especially once you get up to films like Jason X or even the ones right before that, it starts to get so messy, so stupid, and you don't care about any of the characters in majority of these films. There's only a handful of these movies where there's characters that I actually care for at all, and in majority of the films, the performances are so bad that all you can do is laugh, and you just can't wait to see Jason kill people in inventive and fun ways. And I think that that's kind of what makes the franchise, is you have this iconic killer who kills people in really, really awesome ways throughout the franchise. Now, what I will say right out of the gate is this movie, though it's the more modern film and visually I think it's the coolest film, I think Jason looks great, I think the way the film is shot and all that is really well done compared to any of the previous films. This film is actually directed by Marcus Nispel, I believe his name is, and he also directed the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I just enjoy his visual style. He definitely adds a creepy element and vibe to this movie. And there's definitely a lot about his visual style of bringing these characters to life in a new and modern way that is definitely dark and creepy and definitely, you know, separate this stuff from the past. And what I enjoyed about this film is that they decided to kind of just jump forward and make it the first three movies in one. At the very beginning of this movie, we kind of start the movie off with a flashback sequence to what happens at the very end of the first film. So if you've never seen Friday the 13th, here come spoilers for the original film. The big surprise at the end of that first film is the fact that Jason's mom is actually the killer. And I think if people watch this franchise for the first time today, they will expect to see Jason in that first film with the hockey mask, but you don't actually see Jason get the hockey mask until the third film. In the second film, he has like some sort of bag over his head, like a burlap sack, and he actually doesn't get the mask until the third film. So yeah, I like the fact that this movie starts off by showing us the end of the first film, and they kind of do it with a little bit of a twist, because at the end of the first film, we just saw the main character, the final girl, essentially decapitate Jason's mom, killing her right there on the spot, and then we move forward and Jason does appear at the very end of the film. But this time around, we get to actually see that Jason is already out of the lake. He's already come out and he actually watches his mom be decapitated. So, you know, it kind of shows why he's a little bit more of a psychopath in this film, in my opinion. I think that he gets to see his mom get killed and he just kind of goes crazy. Now, it's kind of just like a very straightforward reason. They don't really ever dive into Jason's psyche or kind of give you real explanation for what he was thinking. It's just the fact that he actually saw his mom get decapitated, whereas we never saw that happen in the original film. Now again, my opinion for this film is definitely going to come from the fact that I just binged all of these back to back to back. So a lot of the films in this franchise are essentially piss poor, and I was able to have fun with them because I'm a fan of slasher films, and there was definitely positives to all of them. But yeah, this movie for me was a breath of fresh air. It's put together so much better than the previous films. The performances are far more believable. The characters are a little bit more engaging. I don't really care about anybody per se. I think this film follows the formula of those original films. You know, you have the stoner, you have the girl who's with the asshole guy, you have the asshole guy, you have the girl who's sleazy, you have all those different characters in the film that make up the essentially just the roster of what all of these films have. But I enjoy the fact that this film has better performances, better cinematography, and in a lot of ways better special effects. Now, it's not the best best film in the franchise, but I do think it's the best visually, and I think the performances are easily the best in the entire franchise, in my opinion. This film actually stars Jared Padalecki from the Supernatural franchise, and yeah, I really enjoyed seeing him here in this movie. He plays this guy who's looking for his sister. His sister has actually been captured by Jason, which is something we've never seen Jason do before. Jason has always killed people, and in this time around, Jason finds this girl who essentially is, it kind of looks like his mom, essentially. And because she looks like his mom, he ends up capturing her and bringing her down to like his bunker, and he's kind of just holding her, you know, prisoner, essentially. You know, he's creepy, he's over the top, he's Jason. He doesn't really speak or do anything like that. But yeah, I really enjoy that they kind of changed up Jason just a little bit, that he has like this one singular person that he kind of wants to hold down because it looks like his mom. They only kind of talk about that very briefly. They don't really give you a lot of reason for why he's holding her down, but there is a really small moment where they see a picture of Jason's mom right before she gets captured, and somebody else looks at the picture and says, "Oh, you look just like this girl." And so you're supposed to be hinted at the fact that that's why Jason is holding her. At least that's what I took from it. But yeah, you have Jared Padalecki's character who's out looking for his sister, and I found his character to be a good time. I feel like I had never really cared about any of the missions or just kind of like the things that characters wanted to do in any of the previous films. I was just kind of watching and waiting for them to get killed or watching the people around them get killed. And this time around, I actually wanted him to find his sister. I was actually invested in his story. This film also stars Danielle Panabaker, who I've become a big fan of thanks to the Flash TV series, even though I've seen her in things like some Disney movies back in the day. And I actually met her at Florida SuperCon a little bit over a year ago. I did a vlog on that. If you guys go check out my vlog playlist, you guys can find that in there. It's literally titled "We Met Danielle Panabaker." But yeah, she was really nice. It was a really quick moment to meet her, but I really enjoyed being able to meet her. And yeah, she's in this movie, and I found her and Jared Padalecki to be some of the most engaging characters in the entire franchise. Characters that I actually cared for and actually was engaged to see where their story was going to go. Now, I think I have to say right now, just like all the other ones, this film is not some beautifully written narrative. You know what I mean? You know what you're coming in here for. A bunch of people who are going to get killed by Jason, and you don't really care about them or what their story is. You're just kind of watching. But I did find that Jared Padalecki and Danielle Panabaker's characters were a lot more endearing, a lot more engaging than any of the characters in the previous films, including characters like Tommy Jarvis, who is the only reoccurring character in the entire franchise. I found myself pretty connected to them, and I really enjoyed that. Now, before I continue giving my thoughts, because I'm rambling on here for this first part a lot longer than I expected to, let's go ahead and hear what Interpreting the Stars have to say about this.
What's up? I'm here to hijack Anthony's channel again and talk about Friday the 13th, the reboot. But is it a reboot though? It kind of operates as a movie that takes place between part 2 and part 3 if you really think about it. Actually, if you were forced to call it a remake, I'd call it a remake of Friday the 13th part 3 randomly, because in both films you got stoners as main characters. In both films, Jason goes from wearing a burlap sack for his mask to wearing that famous hockey mask, and of course, by the third Friday the 13th film, the classic series set in stone the overall formula it would be known for, and this film definitely follows that formula. And if you're a fan of slasher films and or the Friday the 13th brand, then I think you'll enjoy the movie as a general rule. But I usually look for something more than that. I look for distinguishment, and there are 12 of these movies. 12! You'd think that there'd be 13 Friday the 13th films, but I guess we can't all be so lucky. Out of these 12 films, you might specifically remember 3 or 4 of them for the differences that they introduced. For me, the most memorable films in the series are the first film for obvious reasons, whichever of the films Jason wasn't actually in, because that was a bold strategy. I remembered Jason X because that was just so stupid and ridiculous and you can't just help but laugh. And my personal favorite was Freddy vs. Jason because that was just, that was a lot of fun. This remake, however, is not amongst the list of Friday the 13th films that I actually remembered. It's just so incredibly formulaic that it doesn't really stand out. It's more modern, obviously, so the look of Jason and the look of how the scenes were shot wasn't too bad, but that's not really why I personally watch a movie. It was cool to see Jared Padalecki from Supernatural and Danielle Panabaker from The Flash in the movie, but again, casting means nothing if you do not care about the characters, and I didn't really care about the characters. It wants you to care, because Jared's playing this guy who's looking for his sister who has gone missing in the last month, so he's worried about her, so you at least have that mystery angle, but it ultimately doesn't matter, because you don't know too much about his character overall, other than the fact that his sister's missing. There's no real character development for his character, nor is there character development for any of the other characters that are hanging out at the lake house. And Because of that, you don't really care when any of them get chopped up by a machete. Now, I don't hate slasher films. I like a few of them, and I definitely appreciate the fact that Jason is a classic horror villain. He's got the look, he's scary, it makes sense, but I think he was presented in a better light with the classic films, because if I remember correctly, you understood what Jason was doing and why he was doing it in those films. You might not have understood the logic behind any of it, but you at least understood why he was targeting these people. You didn't fully understand it in this movie. He's just kind of a monster lurking in the woods that will kill you if you get near him. Makes for an interesting campfire story, you know. Hey, did you hear about the guy that lives around these parts? He's got a machete and he kills you if you get near him. In fact, the movie starts out exactly like that. But a narrative needs explanation. It needs characters to be driven by some kind of force and find value in it. That makes for a truly great character. The story itself could have been so much stronger if they tried only a little to make it something special. But I hold the belief that this is one of the weakest films in the series, and in the end, it's nothing special. Was it made competently enough? I mean, sure, it could have been a lot worse than it was. I would simply say that most of the choices made in the film were just nothing more than safe. So nothing great or terrible happens, which in turn made this film incredibly forgettable. From an unbiased vantage point, that's what hurt it the most. It's nothing special. Lots of stuff could have been better, lots of stuff could have been worse, and that's why the unbiased score is 54%. But bias, I mean, it completely depends on who you are, how much you enjoy this franchise, and Jason as a whole. It has its moments that are fun, just not a ton. So that's why my bias score is 66%, averaging out these two scores to 60%, which is a basic D letter grade. It's not my go-to for the Friday the 13th series. I've only seen the entire series once before, like 7 years ago, and I remembered wanting this movie to succeed so much, but was rather disappointed in the end result. But that's it. Thank you, Anthony, for inviting me to your channel again to talk about this horror icon. And I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace out!
As usual, a big thanks to Interpreting the Stars for being here in this video. I loved hearing what you had to say, man. I was definitely curious to hear what you would have to say, because I know that you view movies in a different way, and sometimes we have opinions that are pretty spot on, and sometimes we're on the complete opposite side. And I know that you critique things in a different way, and I knew that you would have a different outlook on this with me having just binged the franchise and being a sucker for slasher films, especially like the cheesier ones. And I wanted to see what your take would be on this. So I could totally understand watching this and kind of feeling like it's definitely just another run-of-the-mill film in the franchise. I think if you binge them all in order, you'd find that this one's kind of like a breath of fresh air at the very tail end of all these really cheesy and bad films in the franchise. But yeah, on its own, it's not mind-blowing, it's not phenomenal, it's not beautifully written, there's nothing about it that's any more compelling than the other ones. I think it's just you got better actors, you got better writing in some elements, and it looks and feels a lot cooler and creepier than some of the previous films. Now, I think where this film kind of fails for me is the fact that none of the kills, there are good kills in this film, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of really good kills and I enjoy the special effects, but none of the kills are nearly as inventive or really awesome as some of the previous films. I think where Jason and these kills in this franchise really has been able to strive is when they go over the top with some of the kills and make these really, really memorable kills. And I think this film kind of goes for some pretty generic kills. There are some solid kills, there are some moments where you go like, oh, damn. But there's nothing where you're really, really gripped into what's happening, the characters or anything like that. None of the kills ever feel like one of those, oh, damn moments that you see in some of the other films, you know what I mean? So yeah, that would probably be my opinion on this film on an overall. I think that this film visually is a lot cooler than a lot of the other previous films. I think the performances are a lot more solid. I think that the fact that it was modernized allows it to feel a little bit fresher than some of those other films. And yeah, on its own, I do enjoy this film. I enjoy it than I think a lot more of the other films in this franchise. I would personally probably say, though it's not my favorite, I think my favorite is still Jason 6, or Friday the 13th 6, Jason Lives. I think that this is probably either my second or third favorite in the franchise. And I think it's just because it's so different when you watch them all in a row. I think that there's something about it that's, I think the update kind of made it a little bit cooler, and I like the fact that they crammed the first 3 movies into one. So yeah, guys, that's gonna be my thoughts on this franchise. Again, hit the description box down below to go give some love to my buddy Interpreting the Stars. He's got a great channel with constant content. He posts a new YouTube video, a new review every single day. So if you guys are looking for consistent content coming from a YouTuber, definitely go give my buddy some love. You can find his link down below in the description box. Let us know what you guys thought about this video. Hit that like button if you guys enjoy it. Comment your thoughts on this movie. Subscribe if you guys want more videos, and as usual, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.